nothing yet.
Yeah, just fix the problem. I can't sit in here.
Hey guys, welcome to Tuesday Night Live with Rob. Got some great topics to talk about tonight, and wanted to say hello to all of my loyal viewers tonight, and to anyone new that's jumping in, I want to say hello. Drop over in the chat, put a comment in with where you're from, and it's always nice to see where different people across the country and across the globe are watching tonight. So pop that in over there, and so we can check it out. Got some interesting topics to talk about tonight. Some of it firearms related, some of it's not. So just kind of wanted to mix things up a little bit and talk about some different topics tonight. We had a great conversation today with Such 00 on Sensible Prepper. We were talking about socialism in the United States, and had a really great show. So if you didn't get to check that one, go back and check out the Sensible Prepper show on socialism from earlier today. Once again, you can see at the bottom, we've got our Patreon banner rolling down there starting next Tuesday at around 7 o'clock. We're going to be doing our Patreon live, and that'll be an ongoing series as well. So once the YouTube live ends, we'll be rolling over and doing a private show on Patreon for all of our members there. So if you're not a member of Patreon, make sure you join that so you'll be able to catch the live with us next Tuesday as well. A few things tonight. One, we'll just kind of get into it and get started a little bit. First thing that I wanted to talk about was really bad viruses going around right now. I know here in South Carolina, a lot of my friends have been sick. I've been sick. My wife's been sick. I've had several really close friends that have been in the hospital with some different really bad respiratory issues, sinuses and respiratory stuff. So just make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're washing your hands. I'm not a mask person, but if you are, it's great. I think they don't necessarily help to keep viruses and stuff out, but they help to keep our fingers off of our face, which I think a lot of times helps with preventing the spread of different germs and things like that. But just make sure you take care of yourself. It's this time of year, we always have the flu and, different colds and stuff going around. So look after your health. Make sure that you're being conscientious of that, and my opinion, avoid large crowds as much as possible. I think that helps. You get around a big group of people, it tends to spread things faster. We've got a lot of trade shows coming up, SHOT Show and some others, and there'll be hundreds of thousands of people there. And any of you that have ever been to SHOT, you know that when you come home from SHOT Show, you come home with what's called the SHOT Show crud, which is really bad sinus issues, congestion, cough, bronchitis type symptoms, and it normally takes a couple of weeks for it to go away. So if you're going to SHOT this year, we all up our intake of vitamin C by like 1,000% a week or so before SHOT, just to try and stave off as much as we can. But take care of yourself out there, guys. It's a crazy world. A couple of things. Over the weekend we had Gaston Glock passed away, the founder of Glock Firearms. For those of you that didn't see that, he passed away over the weekend. And Cale Yarborough, NASCAR legend, Hall of Famer, he passed away over the weekend as well. So just keep those families in your prayers tonight. Big thing that we've seen on the news the last few days has been the 7.6 magnitude earthquake that hit in Japan. Something that you probably haven't saw on the news today is there have been 6 separate earthquakes January the 2nd, today alone, ranging anywhere from 4.6 to 5.4 magnitude in Japan, kind of spread throughout several different areas in Japan. But Japan's been hit by 6 more earthquakes today alone. So those guys are getting hammered pretty bad over there with earthquakes here lately. And on the coastal side on California here in the United States, we've had several earthquakes there as well as in Texas today. There were several earthquakes. I posted a link down below in the description from the USGS. It's the U.S. Geological Survey. But they have a map that shows earthquakes all over the world. You can look up the location, the earthquake, the magnitude of the earthquake, and things like that. and be able to get a little bit of information about these earthquakes that are happening all over. But it's a great resource to kind of keep up with things that are going on in our world we live in today. Next thing I wanted to talk about was our southern border in the United States. And I've been doing a little bit of research on that about illegal immigrants coming across the border. And, in most of us think, people are crossing the border, they're coming to the United States to try and better their lives or to escape different types of socialism and things like that. And one of the things that I was looking at was the countries of people, the countries of origin of people that are coming across our southern border into the United States. And it really interested me, and I dropped a link in the description below as well that shows a lot of the countries that these people are originating from. And a lot of them are Central and South American countries, with Mexico still being the number one country that we have illegal immigrants coming into this country from. But there's also a lot of other countries. Like I said, Central and South America were a bunch, but some that really caught my eye were Russia, Turkey, China, and India. And the increase that we've seen in people coming illegally into the United States from these countries from 2021 to 2022. 2022 was the last updated information that I've been able to find so far. So I'll just kind of give you guys some numbers from what I found. Excuse me, still dealing with some of the sinus stuff that I've had for a couple of weeks. But give you guys some of the information that I was able to find. Russia in 2021, we had 4,103 people try and cross the border into the United States illegally. In 2022, we had 21,763 people from Russia try and cross the border illegally. That's a 430% increase. Turkey in 2021, 1,409, and in 2022, 15,445, a 996% increase. China in 2021, 450 people. And 2022, 2,176 people. It's a 384% increase. And India, in 2021, we had 2,588. And in 2022, 18,308 people tried to cross the border illegally that originated from India. And that's a 607% increase. I just found those numbers kind of interesting, that we have people not just from Central and South America trying to come into our country illegally, but we have people from all over the world, and maybe from areas of the world that are not very friendly toward the United States, but yet we still have people from those countries trying to come into the United States illegally. So it kind of makes you question what their motives are, what their intentions are. Why do they want to be in the United States coming from a country that is not friendly with the United States? Just something to ponder, something to think about. I have some opinions on it, but I'm going to do a little more research, and maybe we'll dig into this topic a little bit more later on. Let's jump up here and take a look at our questions we've got, and people popping in. And guys, I didn't mention this earlier, but if you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. And as we go through the evening, I'll get to our questions from the chat and work through those as well. A bunch of people in tonight. We've got Gerald Montanona from Las Vegas, Lee Derby from Buffalo, New York, Dave River from Pennsylvania, Nanny D61 from Delaware. I believe that's Delaware. Jeff said, evening, sir. Dwayne Booth from Anderson County. John G. from Moore, South Carolina. Jim Griner from Coastal Georgia. Lynn Clow says, good evening, and I avoid crowds. Absolutely, especially this time of year. GSDK9, hello from North Carolina. And Lynn says, do you believe so many earthquakes are natural or man-made? That's a very good question. And honestly, it's one that I don't have an answer for. I think that they could be, there's a potential that they could be man-made, from different, we could be testing weapons underground that could cause earthquakes or tsunamis. There's a lot of things that could be potentially happening that could be causing earthquakes that are man-made. There's also a lot of things with tectonic plates and them shifting, potential volcanoes erupting under the ocean that could be causing the earthquakes. So there's a lot of things that could potentially be causing these earthquakes, and I just don't have an answer for what that is. I think it's interesting with everything that's going on in North Korea that Japan is seeing and everything that's going on in China that Japan is seeing all of these earthquakes, but I don't have an answer for what they could be. Brad95 says, "Hey Rob, from Wisconsin, DB South Florida checking in." Ken Garrett from Simpsonville. Ken, good to have you on tonight. Joy Paul from southeastern North Carolina. DB says their intentions are sleeper cells. And, I think you could very well be right with that. I think especially with what we've been seeing, a lot of the people that are crossing into our country we're not seeing families crossing the southern border into the United States. What we're seeing are a lot of what the media calls fighting age people. And that's just single individual males that are 15 years old and older, which could be considered as fighting age males. We're seeing a lot of people, and some of the graphs and some of the data that I didn't post up or that I didn't talk about are posted in the survey that I did, and it is interesting to note the number of single individuals that are not crossing as a family, the increase in the single individuals that are coming into our country. And I think you could very well be right. A lot of these people that are crossing our border illegally are coming here for nefarious purposes. And the thing is, once they cross the border, they get into the United States, they spread out, they go all over the place. We have no idea why they're going there or where they're going to the places that they're going. But I think there's a very good chance that there's someone or a group of people that do know why they're going to certain areas and what they're planning on doing there. So, but right now, only time will tell, because we don't have any way to shut our southern border down, or we don't have a government that's willing to shut our southern border down to protect the citizens of this country. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with that. Brad95 says, "How do you feel about primary arms class?" And I'm thinking that you're asking about primary arms glass and not class. Primary arms optics, I'm a big fan of those. I've been using them for years. I've got them on a lot of our rifles. Every one of our hunting rifles has primary arms glass on it, and it worked very well for us. About a week ago, my 15-year-old was able to harvest a pretty nice little deer right at 200 yards, and he broke the shot, called the shot, broke the shot, and when I asked him, what everything looked like, and he was like, "It was good. I saw the crosshairs, I saw the impact through the scope," and he was very pleased with the results from the optic, and I have been as well. The turrets, especially on their target turrets and stuff, they're very repeatable. So if you dial up to make a shot and then dial back down, it returns back to zero like it's supposed to. The clicks are very positive. The parallax focus works just like it's supposed to. The illumination is great. I'm a big fan of primary arms. You'll very seldom hear me ever speak negatively about a experience that I've had with a primary arms optic, and I can say that because they just work. They're very durable, and primary arms has a great warranty with them as well. Gerald Montanona, what optics and rail mount do you recommend for a RAS 47? Thoughts on that weapon? Gerald, I will have to get back to you on that one. There's some side clamp mounts that I'm a big fan of, but I don't, off the top of my head, remember the name of it. It clamps to the side rail and puts a Picatinny over the top of the receiver, and they work exceptionally well. I'm not a fan of Picatinny rails that are mounted to the dust cover on the AK platforms. They can shift around and move around a little bit. No matter how they're bolted and secured, I still see them moving around some and causing a point of impact shift. So if I'm going to do an optic mount, it's going to be mounted on the the rail on the side and then cantilever over the top of the receiver. Tomcat 941 says, howdy. Semper Gumby, good evening, bud. Ben, it's good to have you on tonight. Joy Paul, be sure to give a thumbs up. Yeah. Semper Gumby, wishing you all a happy new year. Hey, you're right. That's something that I didn't say. You know, we're already into January the 2nd. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. And I hope you all had a Merry Christmas as well. John Pia, Alliance, Ohio, checking in. Hey, Semper Gumby is watching us from his campsite using a Starlink. That's awesome. You and I are going to have to talk later about that. I'll give you a call, bud. DB Trojan Horse by way of FJB. Yeah, potentially. DB, don't forget free health care started today in California for all illegal aliens. Yeah, I saw that on the news, and it almost, I had a hard time wrapping my head around that a state in our country is giving free health care to illegal immigrants in this country. That just, for the life of me, I cannot seem to wrap my head around that. You know, I understand if they catch someone at the border and arrest someone at the border for coming into the United States illegally, and they have some sort of health care issue, that they treat that person before they deport them. But to offer them medical care when they're in this country illegally, I don't agree with that, not even a little bit. Excuse me. John Pia says, what do you think about the new Marlin lever action guns, the Dark series? I'm a big fan of them. I've had several of them in the shop and played with several of them. The trigger pull is a little heavy, but there's some companies out there that are making trigger pull kits already for those guns to help reduce the trigger pull weight, and they work exceptionally well. The stock is comfortable, the forend is comfortable, the barrels are threaded on it so you can run a suppressor or a muzzle brake. They're drilled and tapped and come with a Picatinny rail. And there's the aftermarket support that I'm seeing already for those rifles, the Marlins as well as the Henrys. The aftermarket support is phenomenal. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a firearm that has received so much aftermarket support as the lever guns. You know, I don't know if it's due to television and movies really driving the popularity of these firearms, or old caliber like the 45-70 starting to make a resurgence. People realizing the effectiveness of these big heavy calibers for hunting and self-defense use. I've been a big fan of large caliber slow moving projectiles for a long time, and they're great for brush guns. They're inside of 100 yards, 150 yards. They're a great hunting platform, great self-defense platform, and let's be honest, lever guns are just cool. It doesn't matter whose name is on the side of it, whether it's Winchester, Marlin, Henry, whatever, lever guns are cool. And in some states, a lever gun may be a better option for you than a semi-automatic, just because of all the restrictions that semi-automatic firearms have. You may be able to do more with a lever gun than you can with a semi-automatic firearm. John Pia says, what do you think about the new I'm sorry, I've already read that one. DB says, any experience with the TSIS 1911s? DB, I have had quite a bit of experience with the TSIS 1911. I've got another one coming in tomorrow that I'm going to be doing some work to. Everything that I've seen with those firearms has been very favorable. The fit and finish with the slide to a frame is very good. The barrel is fitted correctly. Extractors are fitted correctly. The ejectors are good. I think the trigger pull is heavy on them, which I think most people that have shot one would agree. The interesting thing is the tolerances on those firearms are very, very good. So to swap out a fire control group, the hammer, the sear, the disconnector, a trigger, it requires very little work on good parts, like from EGW guns. It requires very little fitting to get those parts to drop in and work correctly. Where a lot of other guns that are out there, the pin tolerances can be off, the angles can be off on stuff, and they require so much more work to get them to go together and work properly. But the TSIS those guns are really put together well. If you're looking for an entry-level 1911 that you can do some custom work to and really tune it up and tweak it and make it an awesome pistol, the Thesis is a good starting platform. John G says, California now allowing non-citizens to be police. I wonder about loyalty. You know, John, I saw that a week or two ago in the news that they're allowing non-citizens to be police officers. And one of the big questions was, if you are an illegal alien in the United States, it's illegal for you to own a firearm. So how are they going to issue firearms to illegal immigrants in the United States or illegal aliens in the United States? You know, they're going to make them a police officer and give them arrest powers, but they're already breaking the law by being in this country illegally. So how are you going to give someone the power to arrest if they're here already breaking the law? I don't know. It doesn't make good sense to me. But, you know, California is, there's parts of California that are backwards, to say the least. A lot of great people in California, you know, especially, even in the big cities, in San Diego and stuff. There's a ton of really conservative people there, but they're not in politics. The people in power in California are, man, they're just wrecking that poor country, that poor state. I'm sorry. George Boone from Georgia. Hey, George, good to see you, bud. DB says, and no MIM parts. I was thinking that the Thesis had MIM parts. I'll have to check that one out that comes in tomorrow. I'll take a look at that and see if the hammer and sear are MIM'd in those. I was thinking they were, but they may not be. Firearms, fuel, and fabrication. I have a 336W, and that's a Marlin, by the way, with about everything Ranger Point Precision sells on it, and love it. Yeah, I built some of those out for a customer a few weeks ago with the Ranger Point Precision buttstock, fore-end, and some other accessories. And you're exactly right. Those guys are making some awesome parts and accessories for the Marlin 336. If you haven't checked them out, take a look at Ranger Point Precision. Not sponsored by them, don't have any affiliation, but absolutely love their products. And DB says, how are they allowed to work? And we were talking about the illegals in California being allowed to become law enforcement. I don't know. I don't know how they're allowing someone that's breaking the law to enforce the law. It seems like a bit of an oxymoron to me. Maybe we could get someone from California on here that could explain that to us a little bit, because I can't seem to wrap my little simple southern mind around it. Tomcat 941 says, what do you think about Meprolite FT bullseye sights? Let me pull those up and make sure that that's what I'm thinking about. Yep. So I think that is an interesting concept. There's been some companies that have produced a sight similar to that over the years. And basically what it is a long rectangular box that has different fiber optic pieces in it or tritium pieces in it. And once you have everything lined up, the center dot will glow. If it's off to the side, the center dot won't glow. So one of the downsides that I've seen to them over the years is just aligning everything quickly and knowing which way the sights are off. If you're high, low, left, right, to be able to get the sights lined up. Where if you come out of the holster and you present the pistol muzzle high, you don't really know that you need to tip the muzzle down to be able to get the sights to line up. So some good things with them. I think it is, if it's something that you train with and practice with a lot, I think it can be very fast. But for me personally, I normally just go with regular fiber optic or tritium sights over something like this. I think they're cool, but I think it's a little gimmicky, and I don't think that they are any faster or even as fast as your traditional notch and post sights that come on your pistols. DB says, I picked up a 17L a few weeks ago, loving that pistol. And Simple Southern Mind, that's a good one. Hey, feel free to trademark that one. It's not, I just shared it with you guys. But, hey, the Glock 17L, that's an awesome pistol with the 6-inch slide. And the long barrel's got a long sight radius. You get a little more muzzle velocity with it. I think some of the newer ones, they've taken some weight out of the slide and lightened the slide up a little bit, so the pistols tend to cycle a little bit better. But if you're looking for something that you can do, a little longer range shooting, be a little more precise with, the 17L is that is a cool option to go with. So let's talk about something a little bit different, and one that I get a lot of questions about, and that is, what is the ideal barrel twist and projectile weight for an AR-15? There's a lot of different barrel twists that are out there. You can get a 1 in 7, 1 in 7.5, 1 in 8, 1 in 9, 1 in 10, 1 in 12. And what does all that mean? What do those numbers mean? Well, the twist rate is how many turns per inch that projectile will spin inside the barrel. So, for instance, a 1 in 7 twist barrel means for every one 360-degree rotation of that projectile will travel 7 inches in the barrel to make one turn. 1 in 9, the projectile travels 9 inches. 1 in 12, the projectile will travel 12 inches in the barrel before it makes a complete revolution. And generally, what you look at is the lighter the projectile, the faster the twist rate. And by faster, I mean the higher number. So a 36 grain or a 40 grain 5.56 projectile is going to work well in a 1 in 12 twist barrel, where a heavier projectile like 69 grain, 77 grain, 80 grain, some of those will work much better in your slower twist barrels like a 1 in 7 or a 1 in 8 twist barrel. And what is ideal? What is the ideal twist? Well, the ideal twist is really going to be dependent on what projectile weight you're planning on shooting. If you're just going to shoot a lot of mil-circ stuff, M855, M193, 55 grain to 62 grain projectiles, a 1 in 9 twist barrel works great for that, and will stabilize those projectiles, give you great accuracy out of them, and it'll work well for years and years. The downside to it is that 1 in 9 twist barrel. A 1 in 9 twist barrel will stabilize some 69 grain projectiles, some 68 grain projectiles. Some 1 in 9 twist barrels will not stabilize a 69 grain projectile and be accurate with it. I've had, when I first started shooting competitively, had a 1 in 9 twist barrel Bushmaster, and I was shooting NRA service rifle matches, which is just positional matches, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, and I had a Bushmaster 1 in 9 twist barrel, and that was what I was using. And when I was shooting my 55 grain stuff in the closer range, 200 and 300 yards, the 55s worked really well. Well, when I got back to the 500, I wanted to shoot a heavier projectile, and I wanted to use 69 grain. I knew that with a 1 in 9 twist, that 69 grains was probably going to be about as heavy as I could go. So I bought some 69s and went out and tested them. And the 69 grain projectiles would not stabilize and would not shoot accurately out of my 1 in 9 twist barrel. And so I ended up having to go back to a 60 grain projectile to get it to stabilize it and shoot accurately. And then I eventually switched the twist rate on my barrel, just try and get more accuracy out of it. And the ability to be able to use different projectiles. My personal opinion, I think a 1 in 8 twist is the ideal twist. You can use anything from 40 to 75 grain projectiles in a 1 in 8 twist, and it'll stabilize them, shoot all of that big range of projectiles very accurately. All of our military rifles, our M16, A1s, A2s, A3s, A4s, the later A1s, not early 60s A1s. Early 60s A1s were a faster twist barrel. But most everything today uses a 1 in 7 twist barrel. And the 1 in 7 works very, very well. Same thing, anything from a 55 grain projectile and up, it'll stabilize 52s as well. In most barrels will stabilize a 52 without grenading the projectile in midair. But 55s and up, 55 to 90 grain projectiles, a 1 in 7 twist will stabilize it very well. I tend to go with a 1 in 8. I think the 1 in 8, it gives me the ability to use a little lighter projectile. And for me, 75 grain projectiles are the heaviest that I shoot, because that is the heaviest I can load in a projectile and keep it magazine length, where I can still load them in a magazine and they'll feed. So I tend not to go over 75 grain projectiles for my 5.56 or 223 Wild, depending on the chamber on the rifle. But 75 grain load on the magazine length, they'll feed in the magazine, they'll fit in the magazine, and they'll function properly. 80 grains and up will not. They're too long to be able to get in the magazine and make them work like they're supposed to. So 1 in 8 twist works really well for me. I do have some 1 in 7 twist rifles, and my 1 in 7 twist are all chrome lined, hammer forged barrels, and most of them are from Daniel Defense. They're great barrels. I have found that the 1 in 8 twist barrels I get a little better accuracy out of across the board with any projectile weight, and that's that. Let's drop over here to our questions and see what we've got. DB says, why are 9mm or other handgun calibers not offered in different twists like rifles? DB, actually they are. With most of your handguns that you buy, so like Glocks for instance, you can get barrels and Glocks from 1 in 10, 1 in 16, 1 in 24, and maybe a 1 in 32 or 1 in 36 twist. You just have to look around a little bit, but the aftermarket does support different twist rates for different pistol barrels and different projectile weights. That was one of the big things when I was shooting competitively with when I would shoot 9mm major, which is basically a 9mm projectile going about 1,380 foot per second. I was using 124 grain projectiles, and I had like 5 different twist rate options when it came to barrels. And so I would always tend to lean toward the slower twist rates, 1 in 16s or 1 in 24s. That way I could use 124s or 147 grain projectiles, and depending on the powder that I was using, to be able to get some different results out of it. But yeah, there's a lot of pistol barrels out there, a lot of pistol barrel manufacturers out there that do offer different twist rates on their barrels. With 9mm stuff, either a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 16 is really works out well for most people. It allows you to use your lightest projectiles all the way up to your heavier projectiles, and and still get great accuracy out of them. Different manufacturers will put different twist rates in their barrels. If they've got a target number that they're shooting for, like if they know that most of their customers are using 115 grain projectiles in their pistols, they might do a 1 in 24 or 1 in 32 twist with their barrel that will stabilize that lightweight projectile really well and allow that lightweight projectile to shoot very accurately. The downside to that, if they get a customer that uses 124s or 147s or even some of the heavier stuff like the 160s, that really fast twist barrel is not going to do a good job stabilizing those heavier projectiles. Yeah, it's common practice for people that shoot competitively to change the twist rate in their barrel, and it's even for guys that carry a lot. If you have a particular projectile weight that you want to carry in your gun, and the barrel that you have doesn't really support that projectile weight, you can look to the aftermarket to get a barrel that will support the projectile weight that you're wanting to carry. And John G says, I have several Wheaton Arms barrels. What weight ammo is best in those? And will that change when the Alphabet Boys release my cans? No, it will not. We do our barrels with a 1 in 10 twist, which works really well with 115s all the way up to the 160s, with your heavier bullets tending to be even more accurate. So your heavy stuff like the 147s, which are going to be subsonic, your 150s and your 160s are going to be extremely accurate out of our barrels, but you're still going to get great accuracy even if you're using a 115 or a 124. But we went with a little slower twist with it for the heavier projectiles, especially on the threaded barrels, because we know that most people are going to be using a can on those. And so we went with a little slower twist for the heavier projectiles, subsonic velocities, and to give you the best accuracy that you could get with the heavier projectiles. Curtis Hunter says, I have 2 6.5 Grendels, 1 in 22, and a 10.5 inch, both 1 in 8 twist. My 10.5 holds better groups at 100 yards with 100 grains. Is it just I haven't found anything the right grain for the 22 inch barrel? Not necessarily. Think about, so let's talk about rifle barrels and barrel accuracy just a little bit here. So if I've got and I'm going to give you a little analogy here to kind of help you wrap your head around what's happening and why your short barrel is more accurate than your long barrel. Say I've got a 6-foot long broom handle, right? I can take that 6-foot long broom handle, put it over my knee, and snap it pretty easily, right? No problem whatsoever. Well, after I break that broom handle, now I've got 2 3-foot sections. I can take that second 3-foot section and put it over my knee and try and break it. It's probably not going to happen because it's shorter and it's stiffer. You have less leverage on it, right? Your rifle barrel is the same way. The longer barrel is going to have more flex or more harmonic vibration in it than your shorter 10.5-inch barrel. Your short 10.5-inch barrel is going to have very little flex. It's going to have very little harmonic vibration because it's very short and it's very stiff. The longer the barrel, the more harmonic vibration you're going to get, and the more difficult it's going to be for you to get an accurate load worked up for it. That's why a lot of guys that shoot long range competitively start out with a larger diameter bull barrel that tapers down to 1 inch or so at the muzzle. The larger diameter is going to do basically the same thing as the shorter handle. It's going to make that barrel stiffer. It's going to have less harmonic vibration and increase the inherent accuracy of the barrel itself. So if you've got a 22-inch Grendel barrel that's got a slim profile, there's a good chance that barrel will never be as accurate as that 10.5-inch barrel that you have, just because of the profile and the harmonic flex that barrel can have in it. DB says, I figured because the barrel is so short, it didn't matter as much. I think that twist rates are not as important in handgun calibers as they are in rifle calibers, but they do make a difference. If you're trying to squeeze every little bit of accuracy out of a pistol that you can possibly squeeze out of it, playing with the twist rate can allow you to get a little more accuracy out of that pistol and out of a specific projectile that you're wanting to use in it. Will a 1 in 24 twist barrel shoot 115 all the way to 147s? Sure, it will. But one of those projectile weights is going to be a little more accurate than others. Same way with our barrels with a 1 in 10 twist. It's going to shoot 115s all the way up to 160s. You're just going to find one projectile maybe a little more accurate than some of the other projectiles. And that's why I always say, hey, jump in there and get some different projectiles. Try a lot of different stuff in your pistol and see what works the best in it. Try some 115s, try some 124s, some 147s. Try jacketed bullets, try plated bullets, and see what your pistol barrel likes, what it's going to shoot the best. And that's really the best way to find out what's going to work ideally in your firearm, is to buy a few different brands of bullets, a few different projectile weights, and try some different stuff in it. Let's see, Ken Garrett, what is the twist rate for a Glock 17 bought off the shelf? I think they are 1 in 16 twist, if I remember right. Yep, 1 in 16. So your factory Glock barrel is going to be a 1 in 16 twist, and which is not a big difference, especially in a handgun. 1 in 10 versus 1 in 16. They'll all still shoot the same range of projectiles, basically with the same type of accuracy. And Curtis Hunter with a super thanks here. Appreciate you, Curtis. An AV8R1. What are the best offs for a Glock 23 Gen 4? Not sure what you're asking there. Go back and read that comment and try and be a little more detailed. I'm not sure what best offs is. But let me know what you're looking for, and I can drop in there and answer that. Either you guys are quiet tonight or I've been talking a lot. So does anybody have any opinions on what we were talking about earlier with the illegals coming across our southern border in the United States? Not just the Hispanics that are coming across the border, but people from a lot of other countries, like we were talking about earlier with Russia, Turkey, China, India, and several other countries crossing our border. What do you guys think about that? Okay. what are the best optics for a Glock 23 Gen 4? Me personally, I like the Holosun 407 and 507Cs. I think those are some of the best optics out there for handgun sights. I like the fact that the battery compartment is in the side of the sight, and you don't have to take the sight off of the slide to change the battery. That's a big feature for me. Not a huge fan of Trichicons, especially the RMRs, with the battery being in the bottom. And you have to buy, or it comes with a little steel seal plate that basically puts upward pressure on the battery to keep your red dot from flickering when you shoot it. So I'm not a fan of the Trichicon RMRs because of that. I've seen a lot of people mount those on their pistols and not use that seal plate and have flicker issues where the red dot will go out when they're shooting. The seal plate does seem to fix that, but you still have to take the sight off of the pistol every time you want to change the battery. I'm not a fan of that. The Holosun 407 and the 507Cs for the full-size pistols really tend to work well, especially with the battery compartment being in the side. They've got a long battery life. I had one that I was doing some long-term testing on an EDC of mine, and put it in, set the sight on manual brightness to as bright as it would go, and it took almost 3 years to kill the battery. And that was with it being left on all the time. So, big fan of the Holosun stuff. If you're looking for a closed emitter, Holosun makes some really good closed emitter sights as well that fit the same footprint, I believe. So check those out, but great sights. Tomcat 941 says, thank you, Robbie. I've asked several others about bullseye sights, and I either got that they suck or that they're great. I appreciate you actually give your thought to your answers. I'm a big fan of bullseye style sights with one little caveat. I like for my sights to be, my front sight, I like for it to be a little narrow. I like to run a 110 thousandths, 105 to 110 thousandths wide front sight. And my rear sight notch, I like my rear sight notch to be 110 to 115. I want it to be about 5 thousandths larger in width than what my front sight is. That allows me to have a little bit of daylight on either side of my sight, which allows my eye to naturally center the front sight in the rear sight notch. They're very fast, they're very accurate. And the weird thing is with like a lot of your factory guns, they have a wide front sight, like 125 to 150 thousandths wide, and a rear notch the same way. That's 130 to 155 or 160 thousandths wide. And those, I tend to shoot those very well. Which is kind of interesting that, I don't see a huge separation between the bullseye sights and your traditional OEM style sights until you start shooting at distance or you're trying to be very precise. And that's where the bullseye style sights with a narrower front sight and a tighter dimension with your air gap or light gap on either side of your rear sight to front sight ratio really come into play. That narrower front sight will allow you to be much more precise when you're shooting at distance, or if you're just trying to make a really tight shot. You can still get tritium in your bullseye style sights. So like your Bomar adjustable rear sight, you can get a Bomar adjustable rear sight that has tritium inserts in it. You've got windage and elevation adjustment, as well as the narrower notch, and then you can match your front sight to your rear sight notch. Excuse me. Ken Garrett says, could it be the new Democratic voting base? Yeah, it absolutely could be. Chris Matthews says, Happy New Year, Robbie. Will nitride for a rifle barrel be sufficient if not high rapid fire as opposed to cold hammer forged? Yes, it will. From what I've seen, black nitriding will give you almost the exact same lifespan out of a rifle barrel that cold hammer forging will, and which is something that I've been wanting to do some testing with one of my 6.5 Creedmoor rifle barrels and see what kind of extended barrel life I can get with the Creedmoor with a nitrided barrel versus a stainless steel barrel. With in the 5.56, what we normally see is your stainless steel barrels are going to get somewhere in the 5,000 to 7,000 round range, where nitriding that same stainless steel barrel will double the barrel life or more. You can get anywhere from 15 to 20,000 rounds out of a barrel before the accuracy starts going away just by black nitriding it. And that's been something that I've really been wanting to do some long-term testing on with the 6.5 Creedmoor and see if I can go from 21 to 2,500 rounds, and even if I could double that to 5,000 rounds, that's a barrel that I'm not having to purchase for one of my long-range precision rifles. So that's definitely something that I want to do some more testing with, and some long-term testing on the larger calibers. But on the 5.56, the testing that I've done, I have seen it'll double the barrel life essentially and be very close to cold hammer forging. I think cold hammer forging, you still get a few thousand more rounds, but for the cost difference between the two, as well as the accuracy difference, cold hammer forged barrels are generally not as accurate as a cut rifled barrel. Cut rifled barrels that are black nitrided are generally more accurate than a cold hammer forged barrel. So you can get better accuracy and barrel life that starts to get close to cold hammer forging. I think it's a great option. Curtis Hunter, he says, I have a opinion, but my mom said if I don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Not a lot to say about the communist state of California. Man, I hear you there, bud. Yeah, I've been told that same thing my entire life. If I don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything at all. And that's why I asked for your opinion on it. Dwayne Booth says that's what they hope. I tell you, I'm concerned about our election this year. It's I've already been seeing stuff pop up in the news, different commercials and stuff about mail-in ballots, and apply for your mail-in ballot now. Go ahead and get that process started. And when I talked about this earlier today, when I was in the Marine Corps and we voted, we had to vote absentee because obviously it's difficult to get back to your home state a lot of times during an election cycle on election day to be able to vote. So when I was in the Marine Corps, we always voted absentee. But even voting absentee, there was still someone there that handed you your ballot, waited till you filled it out, folded it up, sealed it, put it in an envelope, and then they took that envelope and they mailed it. Having ballots just mailed out randomly to people's house, I'm not a fan of that. There needs to be accountability. There should be accountability, and it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're independent, libertarian, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone wants to know that the election is fair and that the process is fair and that our electoral system is accurate and done the way that it's supposed to be done. No one wants to have in their mind that our election system is a failed system, is a flawed system. And I really feel like the majority of the people in this country, no matter what party they're affiliated with, right now feel like our electoral system is a failed system, that it has flaws in it. And I think those flaws need to be dealt with. I think they need to be addressed. And I think that needs to be done quickly before our next election cycle in November, or otherwise a lot of people in this country are just gonna lose faith in our electoral system. I mean, it's like you look at it and you're like, well, yeah, I feel like they cheated. Why should I even bother voting? If my vote doesn't count, my vote's not going to count. Why should I even bother? And I feel like that's one way you can look at it. Is I think there's people that want you to think that and not vote. And I will always vote just so I know that I did my part. But I think I think our electoral system definitely needs to be looked at and some flaws with it addressed. Gerald Montanona says, I'm a big fan of legal immigration. My mother was from the Philippines, and when they immigrated from there, her and her brother had to join the military in order to help expedite their citizenship. Gerald, the majority of us, our ancestors have immigrated here to this country from somewhere. My wife's family, a lot of her family immigrated here just a couple of generations ago from Italy. My family immigrated here several hundred years ago. Most people in this country immigrated here and came to this country through the correct process. And I agree with you completely. There is a process to immigrate into this country, because you're not just coming here to work. You're coming here to become a citizen of the United States. You're coming here to assimilate into our huge melting pot of culture that we have in this country. And that's one of the things that I really feel like a lot of people miss with illegal immigration coming across the border. They're not coming here to become a U.S. citizen. They're coming here to reap the benefits and rewards of our society that we've worked for hundreds of years to develop without contributing to our country. And that's the big thing that I have with illegals coming across our border. Hey, I'm all for everyone trying to better themselves, right? But there's a way to do it, and there's a way to do it correctly. Come to this country and better yourself the correct way. Become a citizen of this country, assimilate into this country, and do it the right way, not the wrong way, not illegally. Gerald says, and bear in mind, in order for them to be able to legally immigrate, my grandfather was a POW from the Patron Death March. I had to work at the U.S. Embassy in Manila for 25 years in order to immigrate. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't happen overnight. Legal immigration does not happen overnight. There's a long and lengthy process to legally immigrating into the United States. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people, they're just like, you know what, I'll just cross over into the country illegally and take my chances. But I have so many friends that have came to this country as immigrants and came here the right way, and every single one of them absolutely love this country, love what this country stands for, and I've never met someone that's legally immigrated into the United States. They're like, yeah, I think I'll just go back to where I came from. No. They come here because it offers them an opportunity for a better life. And we understand that here. They understand that. And, we're going to have to do something about the illegal immigration into our country, or otherwise we're going to have big issues. And that may be a topic that we dig into one night and just spend an hour talking about that, and maybe looking at some solutions to it as well, from a local level with our local politicians, and how to persuade people all the way up to Washington to do something proactive about the illegal immigration that we have in our country. So let's look into that later. Chris Matthews says, for some reason, I don't trust mail-in. I try and vote early or absentee. And I agree completely. My wife and I, we've had to vote absentee in the past. We were going to be out of town during the election. And, we went in and we showed our ID. We filled out the paperwork. We voted absentee. And I think that's a great way to do it. And early voting is no different. You do the same thing. You go in, you show your ID, and you vote. So I'm a big fan of early voting and absentee voting, but not mail-in ballots where they just send a ballot out in the mail. There has to be some accountability for that ballot when it goes out. There has to be accountability for that ballot when it comes back in. Chris Hunter says, but a non-resident cannot register a gun. Yeah, and I'm guessing that you're talking about in California. Joe Montanona says, I meant my grandfather had to work at the embassy, LOL. Yeah, I got you, bud. Dwayne Booth says, someone I know, his wife was here over 40 years before she got her citizenship. And that's exactly right. A lot of people become a permanent resident of the United States, but they don't go the extra step of becoming an actual citizen, which does require a lot more work and some testing and stuff that you have to take to show that you know your history of this country, and that to really make sure that you have put forth your due diligence to become a citizen of this country. And yeah, I'm the same way. I know several friends of mine that are they're permanent residents here, but they have never got their citizenship because of the continued process and the work that it requires to go into it. Chris Matthews says, if you illegally immigrate into other countries, the penalties can be quite severe. Yes, they can, up to and including death. That is a fact. Curtis Hunter says, that would have made more sense if the text was not long and it didn't show up. LOL. I got you, bud. All right, guys, it's 6:55. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up for the night. Once again, starting next Tuesday, we're going to be doing our live on YouTube from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then after that, we're going to be doing a second live, a private live on our Patreon channel for all of our Patreon members. So if you're not a Patreon member, jump over there today. There's entry levels that start as low as $5 a month. You can join and become a member of Patreon, help support everything that we do here with our videos and research and all that we put into our stuff. But I'd love for all of you to become a member of our Patreon Nation. There's a link down below in the description where you can check that out as well. Guys, we'll see you next week.